all these years. And he says, I saw you under the fig tree, on the mountain, on the sea, catching fish, doing whales, whatever.
Amen.
I saw you.
Yeah. Wow.
Behold,
Let's see.
behold an Israelite in whom there is no guile, sister.
Yeah. And
That's what he said, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
What a beautiful story.
It is beautiful.
One
And it's
of the Bibles that people need to page through.
it's a wonderful thought to know that God's not distracted, although we've been.
We're gonna just set
up camp.
Okay, we'll ask everybody maybe to mute and then you guys engage and then we'll open it up after they talk. How about that? Because it has feedback
Mm-hmm.
when everybody's on, so everybody can mute.
Just go mute.
Yeah.
And there we go. And we didn't warn anyone, but we're just going to go Facebook Live as well. We might as well just engage.
Celebrating the gift of Jesus that came to the world. In
See if
one
it's working.
another,
Is it
Jesus.
in just, we are just so, Lydia and I, so overwhelmed to engage this moment on our unexpected tour to the US of A. It wasn't long ago where we still kind of, just didn't even imagine the possibility of doing an up and coming tour to the uttermost parts of the earth. I mean, we've just landed in the snow 2 days ago in Fargo. And I said to Lydia, how far can you go? I'm so glad that the uttermost parts of the earth are equally embraced, equally included. And though our home, that we could call it, would be on the other side of the planet, there is nothing less enjoyed in the immediate parousia of the Jesus, the Christ, the one who says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And to realize that we are Adelphos, we come out of the same womb of the eternal thought of Elohim, who spoke words recorded by Moses in Genesis chapter 1, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. And look at you on the screen. I have your beautiful faces. Some of you, like Kathy and John, we haven't seen you since the 80s. And many of you we have just connected with via. Thank God for internet, but thank God for face-to-faceness that brings the tangible into the equation. I love the way John writes when he says in 1 John chapter 1, he says, that which we have heard. Imagine the rumor in the prophetic womb, in the mouth of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms, finally takes on flesh. It's to me the patience of God to the extreme. How God could stretch, Elohim could stretch. In the yesterday of our context of this time zone, when Hebrews introduces us to Jesus' sameness in the yesterday, in this moment today, and then taking this moment and stretching it into an eternal future that we can only guess in our natural logic what it would be. And we are engaged in a Father who calls things which are not as though they were. I'm so glad that God is not sitting in their oneness, Father, Son, and Spirit, and saying, so where should we go now? Where do we go with this image, this likeness of our being? Intentionally revealed in flesh. 700 years before Paul, before Christ, Isaiah spoke. And Isaiah addresses every possible definition that we could imagine of distance, separation from our beginning, our being, our genesis in God. And Isaiah announces with a cry of jubilee. He says, Christmas is about to happen. The greatest festivity celebrated globally, the greatest moment ever announced, is that every single obstruction, every single excuse we could fathom as a human race of separation, God has cancelled. Every high place, every hill, mountain brought low, every valley filled up, every crooked place made straight, all the question marks, exclamation marks. I'm so glad that we begin with an exclamation mark. That's why it's called good news. It wouldn't be that good if it wasn't news to begin with. All right, let me just get myself back on track for our Facebook friends. Here we go. Are we still online? I'm not sure, but there we go. Now you can hear us. The good of the good news cannot be exaggerated. Sadly, we have inherited the futile ways of our fathers, trying to box into little time frames and into little doctrines and ideas and philosophies, squeeze the omnipotent, eternal Father. Heaven cannot measure, the expanse cannot measure God. And we've tried to squeeze God into our, convenient little libraries of books. When the eternal one, the word that was before the written code, before time was, gave such articulate definition of all the deity is. The fullness, says Paul in Colossians 2 verse 9, the fullness of the Godhead bodily. I mean, that sounds, God, do you know what you're talking about? Bodily, in human frame, in skin, language, on exhibit, the radiance of the glory of God on exhibit in your skin. God is not embarrassed about your body, a little bit too tall, a little bit too short, a little bit too overweight, perhaps in someone's definition, but the fullness of all that God is, snugly fitted, tailor-made for human skin. Broadcast fails. We'll just try and get this back on again. Are we still there? Broadcast details. I just want to make sure we've got your live video has ended.
You're fine.
No, this is fine.
No, let's just start another one here on post for 30 days. Then
Post.
Hang on. I'll just start another little one.
No, but post that one.
Okay, my darling. Post now. And he's going for 30 days. And we go again live video. There we go.
Go live.
Go live. Thank you, Lydia. It's amazing that we are sitting in the most marvelous day that we have ever witnessed in our generation of being able to go live. Can you imagine how nervous Jesus would have been, if this is all like pressing in on him? I'm going to have to go live. I'm going to have to take invisible into visible time zone dimension. And Jesus awakes on planet Earth. He's just born in the stable, and he says, "Oh, okay. Father, Son, Father, Spirit, are we okay with this?" You know that there is a boldness in the declaration of the good news that does not require any kind of apologetic religious ideas. What we do is we don't want to go too certain on God, because you never know. God says, I want to persuade you more persuasingly. Hebrews chapter 6 verse 16, I want to convince you more convincingly. Isn't it amazing that we find ourselves free falling in the persuasion of God? Do you know that God has their mind made up about you. Humanity, you have nothing to fear because every eye shall see him. In the context of Isaiah chapter 40, I will say Paul quotes Isaiah 700 BC or BP before Paul. Isaiah declares in Isaiah 40 about the fact that there is no excuse that any individual, past, present, future, could ever manufacture that can distance them successfully from their maker. Because he says in verse 5, the reason for this highway in this wilderness, uninhabitable planet, is for the glory of God to be revealed. And it's almost embarrassing because he says in Isaiah 40, verse 5, all flesh shall see it together. Where is the glory of God? In hiding then, if what we read in our newspapers and experience in our own personal lives might just be such a contradiction, such a distraction, such compromise to the intentional, initial, authentic idea of Elohim, us, exhibit in human form. He says, all flesh shall see it together. Isn't it at an amazing age? We struggle with getting our live broadcast just to be seamless enough so that somebody out there might just hear a word that's like a little match that ignites their hearts to understand themselves mirrored, not in the man Jesus Christ whose purpose was to set up the Christian religion. By no means. Jesus entered this planet, the one who upholds the universe by the word of Logos, the logic of God that was before time was face to face with God. And the entire idea of God was a face to faceness, the romance of the ages, where us entire humanity could be brought into a union that is inseparable, that carries no sell-by date, that carries no kind of maybe in the equation, because it's the very essence of all that God is on display in human skin. It might be a little fragile and wrinkled and losing some hair and might not just, come on. What you carry is the mystery that was hidden for ages and generations. And guess what it is? It is Christ in the nations. Ethnos, Christos, en ethnos, in the masses of humanity, even beyond the extreme context of the Jewish nation. Here God comes and he explodes into our world. And we are celebrating 22 years ago, a visit, not in a little overnight bag, Jesus just squeezing into time so they can just do something heroic and then off again. He vanished from their sight, but not before he said, I will never abandon you. I will never leave you like orphans. He has come to engage us in the most intimate possible, almost unthinkable platform of our own human lives. And he's come to introduce us to ourselves again in the face of Jesus Christ. Now I want to quickly jump with you to 2 Corinthians 3 and verse 18, because Paul writes it so powerfully. I was so blessed today with Dr. Emery's help, to have the wax unblocked out of my ears, because I for months, I thought, we were flying to the Netherlands the other day when we were visiting our children in Zurich. And I had to go and preach in the Netherlands. We flew out. I was up at 5 that morning, and we landed. And in the flight, I just felt my ears were just so painful. And I thought I'm landing and I'm deaf. I couldn't hear a thing out of this ear until this afternoon. And the other one was kind of there, but I'd lose the conversation. And then my ears were unstopped by my beautiful friend, Dr. Patrick Emery, who scratched all this stuff out. And I said, I've got new ears, and I'm crying. I'm so happy to hear again. But let me tell you that our minds needs to be unwaxed from time to time, because we so easily get waxed up with old ideas, and we think we've heard, we think we can even quote scriptures, and we can even relate to wonderful, beautiful verses of scripture. But then God comes by his Holy Spirit And he just does a bit of a shaking, and something happens. My ears become unstopped. My eyes, Paul says it was like scales, or Luke writes about Paul's experience in Acts chapter 9. He said it was like scales at the rip of my eyes, and I suddenly saw the invisible. And then Paul writes about it in 2 Corinthians 3 verse 18. He says, wherever Moses is read, the veil remains. Isn't it a sad picture of the best platform that religion can operate from, driven by why? Willpower. I mean, it's just 10 out of 10 that I need to get from time to time to finally feel I'm okay. And then James comes, the younger brother of Jesus, and he says, you know, what's so good if you can boast about the fact that I never committed adultery, but I did murder somebody. I mean, do you think that this is James talking, just reasoning with us in James, book of James, Jesus' younger brother. He says, would my not murdering, would my not committing adultery negate the fact, you know, negate the fact that I committed a murder? At least, you know, I committed a murder, but at least I got 9 out of 10. How's that for today, you know, and for yesterday, and for maybe the last 2 months or 10 months or 10 years of my life? Moses represents veiled understanding. Moses' face veiled. I thank God that in this place of encounter, this tent of meeting, Joshua remained behind when Moses left, because the glory on Moses' face was like the glory of a flower. It fades in a while, so we had to be veiled. So whenever Moses is read today, with all sincerity, the veil remains. You can read it in any translation of your choice, 2 Corinthians 3 and verse 15. And then it says, verse 16 and 17, when a man turns to the Lord, the veil is removed. And with open face, unveiled faces, Paul says, we all. I love the way when Paul says we all. We're all y'all. We're in y'all country because we're in the y'all gospel. Paul says to Corinthians 3 verse 18, we all with unveiled faces behold the what? You read it. You can go King James, NIV, wherever you want to go. You can go Mirror if you want to, but it's there. It's documented. With unveiled faces, we are beholding the glory of the Lord. But you've got to hear this. As in a mirror. You see, we're okay with beholding ideas around any kind of artistic expression of the glory of the Lord. We can let our imagination go wild and think God's glory packaged in this dimension. You know, you kind of have to flutter your eyes and just go, God's glory. It's dynamite. It's diamonds. It's gold. It's glitter. It is amazing. Of course it is. But the most accurate display of the glory of God is en skenos. Can you recognize in the Greek word skenos, which translates tabernacle? Can you hear the idea of skin? In your skin, as in a mirror, there's a reflection there. And it's not a fake make-believe me, one I'm hoping to become if I try hard enough. Moses endorses the veil, but Jesus unveils the mystery that was hidden for ages and for generations. And for ages and generations, the glory that was hidden in skin is now unveiled, so that we may see the glory of the Lord as in a mirror. And in that place of mirror gazing, remember when I started, I think we had to interrupt the Facebook in a recording earlier on, when I started off with the idea that we are beholding, like John writes in his first epistle, chapter 1 and verse 1, he says, we've heard rumors, but what we have heard, we have seen. And in the next, you know, can you see the unfolding of this encounter? What we've heard, we have seen, we beheld with our eyes. We've had the privilege to have a mirror safari just a few weeks ago, and our guide would often point us because he's followed without our being aware of it, perhaps because we've had people from all kinds of countries and from Europe and America. He would follow the spoor, the tracks. And you know that you cannot separate the track from what the track imprint represents. If you're often looking for leopard, then you might as well follow leopard spoor or cheetah spoor. If you want to see a hyena, look for the hyena spoor. And we suddenly witness how the guide would point. And doesn't matter how expensive the binoculars are, how expensive my camera is. If I'm pointing it in the wrong direction, I will not see what the guide is pointing to. He says, we behold the glory of the Lord as in a mirror. Now back to 1 John 1:4, he says, what we heard, what we've seen, what captivated our gaze. And I just want to engage you today with that which captivates the gaze. I know you've heard this message, you've seen, you've read from, it's become, we've been quite shocked to see the size of the book because we normally only see it on the screen. And to realize that there are pages and you can open anywhere in the Mirror Bible, you will not be disappointed because the one page just connects with the next and wherever you turn. But our gaze becomes captivated to see beyond the page, because the page can be gold glittered, leather skinned, but it's the glory of the Lord on display, on exhibit in the man Jesus Christ. And now we as audience do this. We're not just looking at a lovely show. You know, we've been to Switzerland just the other day and we managed to watch because my brother-in-law, my son's father-in-law plays in the opera house orchestra. And we managed to slip in behind the scenes back door to see the Nutcracker. And my goodness, we could witness this famous display, and we felt, well, we're just audience, but we know somebody that's there. We could, hey, wave, and there was another guy playing the double bass, and we've met him on in South Africa years ago through our son, and we kind of think, we know somebody, we recognize someone's face there. And so often, you know, it's like that in life. We kind of feel at times that we're just in the audience watching whatever it is we're watching, life as it happens. Suddenly we discover, hey, but that's me out there. That's you out there on the stage. For a moment, you're just spectator. The next moment you realize, I am absolutely equal participator. Because you know what? You don't need to ask God what his plan is for your life. When you discover that your life is his plan, and moments become most significant, because in God says, Epimenides, 600 BC, before Paul, BP, he says, because Paul read these things, Greek old poets wrote, and he grabs a little sentence out of one of their songs, in him we live and move and have our being. We live and move and have our being. How can you ever find a space on planet Earth, in the universe, where God is absent? I can make my bed in hell, Hades, Sheol, whatever you name. Behold you. You cannot run from God. You cannot hide from agape, because agape carries you for all eternity in their minds. I love the way David says, God is mind full of you. Imagine God's mind full of you. And then he invites you to see through their eyes, you. What we have heard as mere rumors, we've seen. And this is shocking, because in our seeing him, we see mirrored there the glory of God clothed in my skin. And in our gazing, our hands touch. There is nothing more tangible. I want to tell you, more tangible than the most spectacular miracle you could ever witness. Somebody else tells you and you read it, watch it, and you travel overseas to see another miracle. The greatest miracle you could ever encounter in your flesh is to know that the one who figured it out, that you can taste and see, you can smell the coffee and the roses, and you can hear, like I'm hearing with brand new ears today. It's like, wow, everything just has sound. But there's a hearing that takes hearing into another dimension. We've just been privileged a few weeks back en route to America to visit our children and our 2-year-old granddaughter in Zurich. And they took us to a science museum. And at one point in the science museum, they tell you you've got to lean your elbow on a certain place and then put your hand to your ear. And then you actually hear what dolphins hear underwater, because they hear through their bones. And you realize there's a dimension of hearing that we know nothing about. And then on our way out, Stefan called us, our son, he says, come and stand here. And there's a little spot. There's a little spot on the floor, the size of a cone. And above the spot, there's an infrared light. And as you position yourselves directly under this light, you hear the sound that is happening at that moment globally. You hear a sound that you couldn't even hear with your natural ear, but just repositioning yourself. And I want to tell you that in our conversation, in the conversation of God, we are blessed to be audience to. We hear a word that in many and various ways God spoke. Do you know that God has never gone silent on the human race? Even there were 400 years when no prophet heard. Doesn't mean that God stopped, zipped up, nose speaking. The voice goes with every rising sun and setting sun, every moment that every season witnesses, every creature on the planet, every being, every star, every galaxy in the universe bears witness to the voice of God that points to you. In the eschatos of God, in these fragments of thoughts, yes, he spoke to our fathers through the prophets, but the entire womb of the prophetic word pointed to one occasion where this word would become flesh, so that all flesh may see the glory of God as in a mirror. God has always had you in mind. You're not some kind of PS, afterthought, postscript that kind of happened, you know, accidental pregnancy. Ooh, they overstepped the line. John says it so clearly in John chapter 1, verse 13, and you can read it in the Mirrored Bible. Let me just read one verse just for the sake of doing a Bible reading. Because I remember I was preaching in a prison, maximum prison one day, and there was one guy that just kept, you know, he just couldn't settle down. So I asked Carl Africa, my precious brother, we were prison chaplains at the time. And I said to him, because the guy came to speak to Carl afterwards, and Carl asked him, what was it that disturbed you? He says, oh, you know, you forgot to open the meeting in prayer. So I almost forgot to read the scripture. So I'll just quickly read. I'm just reading to you John chapter 1 in the Mirror Bible, and I'm reading to you verse 13. I'm very tempted to read a little bit more, but I won't. Otherwise, we'll just sit here the whole evening. But there it is. Let me just show you. There is John chapter 1, verse 13. We've touched on 1 John 1, and just before I forget, I was on 1 John 1. I was on a roll. What we've heard, what we've seen, what we've gazed upon. Our hands have handled. The next sentence says, and the word was made manifest. This is not the cul-de-sac. This is not another philosophy that's going to leave you to, well, I've read about 1 million pages or books on this matter, and I still feel a little bit confused. You know, I'm a little bit uncertain. I'm not quite certain enough, because what God announces carries a certainty in itself that abolishes doubt, that abolishes the ideas of, oh, but I need to have an FAQ situation. And by the way, if you do have FAQs, go to Mirror Bible, MirrorWord.net. Under Home, there's an entire list of the book, Divine Embrace. It will help you sort out a lot of the questions that might pop up and say, but what about this verse? What about that? What about this? I'm going to verse 13, I promise. Here we go. These are the ones who discover. But verse 12 has been one of the most misinterpreted verses in the Bible in the evangelical world for centuries. But you don't have to buy the Mirror Bible. I'll get you the app for free if you've got Android. I'll get you the app. You can just go and read the app. But I want to say something in the context of the word that was before time was. I might as well just read verse 9. A new day for mankind has come. Do you know that we're not predicting a future tense tonight to have a prophetic word? I'm speaking about something that the prophets carried that sounded like the Messiah is about to happen in skin. The word that was before time was face to face with God on their mission, on their destiny to be unveiled in your skin. So verse 9 of John chapter 1 says, a new day for mankind has come, the authentic light of life that illuminates everyone. Does that sound a little bit global? I was almost going to say universal, because it does sound like this could go worldwide. Maybe John is just endorsing what he heard Isaiah said. All flesh shall see his glory together. Where? Hosted in their skin. The true light that enlightens everyone was about to dawn in the world. I love Christmas lights, but I tell you what, there's a light that outshines them all. Before the sun was, the word was, and God said, let there be light. And the same God, Paul testifies of it, struck blind to his old philosophies and his ideas, struck off his high horse. And he testifies about this encounter in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 6. He says it is the God who said, let light shine out of darkness, who shone into our hearts to give the what? The light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of a man. Isn't it wonderful that the man Jesus Christ is the very source, the exhibit of all that God is? In the eschatos, says Hebrews chapter 1, the eschatology of God is Jesus. The eschatology of God is not another book you buy in the Christian library. The eschatology of God is the final conclusion of everything the prophets uttered concerning the Messiah. And the day of the Lord has come. The light that shines brighter than any other possible light has shone.
I can't.
Sorry.
Hello, Robin, Julie. Do I speak too fast? Must I go slower? Maybe just mute so that we can just carry on. Thank you so much. So a new day for mankind has come. There we go. And the authentic light about to dawn. Now listen to this. Although no one took any notice of him, can you imagine God, the creator of the universe, lands on planet Earth, not camouflaged in a Spider-Man suit, but in flesh, and no one takes any notice. There's no red carpet. There are no Christmas jingle bells sounding at the birth of Jesus. There are no like parades. We'll get to the three wise men maybe, but I don't think so tonight. Although no one took any notice of him, he was no stranger to the world. He always was there and is himself the author of all things. Imagine the author of the universe, the author and finisher of faith, arrives on planet Earth, not in a mysterious looking disguise of some superhuman, but all of God wrapped up in skin, all of deity revealed in him, and in him we are, says Paul in Colossians 2:9 and 10, we are complete. In him we've wasted so much time in our journey to try and get there, when there is where we are to begin with. We're not talking about your or my experience versus that one's experience or this one's belief system, but we're talking about the faith of God that sees the end from the beginning, that announces image and likeness redeemed, pre-Adamic innocence in Adam, redeemed. We're not striving to get somewhere with this. It denounces that even though we did not recognize him, it did not make God absent. You see, our indifference, our hostility does not make God absent. Jesus tells his disciples, John 14, on the threshold of the cross, he says, I'm on my way to go and do something that will prepare a place for you so that you may be where I am, not where I'm going, in some kind of space, in outer space. I'm going to the cross to redeem humanity, to bring closure to the lies that you've believed about yourselves, so that you may be where I am. Now I ask you just a very logical question. Where was Jesus when he said that? Was he in skin? Absolutely. How more present can you be right now in this audience than in your skin, present in your person, in your body, in your face? Here we are present on the other side of the planet, right here in Wapitan, not too far from Fargo, in North Dakota. We are present, and our presence means here we are. And Jesus comes and he says, I'm going to do something on that, in that murderous death, the horror of my own creation, plucking out my beard, spitting in my face, crucifying me, allowing me to be buried in another man's, crucified on another man's cross, buried in another man's grave. And I'm going to go into whatever your imagination, wherever it can take you to your deepest darkness. I'm going there, and I'm coming back with the keys. I'm coming back with the keys to unlock your mind to the lies from everything that kept your mind captive and trapped in the idea that, oh, but there is waiting a day of judgment. Jesus says, my Father judges no one. All judgment has been given to me. And then it announces in John chapter 12, now is the judgment of this world. Not maybe one day in the sweet, not so sweet by and by. No, he says, when I am lifted up on that cross, I will draw every definition of darkness. I will draw every definition of judgment unto me, because he has come with one mission, to declare that God did not make a mistake when Elohim said, my skin, my likeness, for the first time in the history of the universe, the invisible made visible in human form. And he came to redeem this. And in verse 12, let me read verse 12. I was on my way to verse 13, but verse 12 says, everyone who realizes their association in him, convinced that he is their original life and that his name defines them. Remember Ephesians 3 verse 15, Paul prays. He says, I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named. Do you know that you are surnamed, that you are named Mr. Simon, son of Jonah? I say you are Mr. Rock. You're a chip of the old block. And upon this revelation that the Son of Man, we share our co-begottenness in God, and not thank God for our mothers and the passport of their wombs that brought us forth on planet Earth, but we are begotten in God. And this is where we're heading up with this conversation. So everyone who realizes, verse 12 of John chapter 1, who realizes their association in him, convinced that he is their original life and that his name defines them. He says it in the context of no one recognized him. God gives the assurance that they are indeed his offspring. Now, God didn't get this from Aratus, the poet. Aratus was a Greek philosopher. Paul quotes him in Acts 17, and he quoted him to say, we are indeed his offspring. Can you now begin to realize why Paul had the audacity to speak like this in the context of Greek philosophers? They're not a Christian, Protestant, Catholic, charismatic, Pentecostal audience. They are pagan philosophers. For centuries, they have added their ideas day after day, built their crafty shrines with their grotesque images carved out of wood and stone, decorated with gold. And then they built also an altar to the unknown God. Just in case we're just leaving one of the gods feeling a little bit neglected, and we can still get into kind of judgment mode, because judgment mode is what keeps religion going. Religion needs paying and returning customers. And here, Paul announces to them, the one you ignore. He says, let me introduce you to the one you worship in ignorance. I want to tell you something about this God, the creator of the universe, the creator of the earth. All things began in this God. And guess what? This God is not far from each one of us. And again, read it in any translation of your choice. Acts chapter 17. This God, who is worshipped in ignorance, is not far. That means equally close. Emmanuel does not mean God, a little bit closer to the Jew than the Greek. Equally embraced in the same skin, in the same moment of the entire humanity. He's not far from each one of us. He's brought sin consciousness to closure because God appointed a day and a man. And that's the Jewish context of the prophetic word. Read 1 Peter 1, verse 10 and 11. Who appointed a day and a man. On that day, in that man, God would judge the world innocent. And of this, God has given evidence by raising Jesus from the dead. The resurrection life of Jesus is the receipt to humanity's acquittal. Go and read Romans chapter 4 and verse 25. And especially if you have a Greek interlinear Bible, go and read it there, you'll see. So everyone, I'm just finishing with verse 12, then we can hit verse 13, and I think it's almost time to leave. I don't know where we are, but yeah. Okay, Lydia says yes, so I've got to stop. God gives assurance that they are indeed his offspring. My beautiful Lydia, I love you so much. God gives the assurance that they are indeed his offspring, begotten of him. He sanctions the legitimacy of their sonship. Where does this sentence put the father of lies? Just where the father of lies needs to be. The father of lies. Can the authentic, the only one father that matters, the father of the universe, the father of mankind, have any competition? Ephesians 4, Paul says there's only one faith. What God believes, not what we believe. One father. Sanctions the legitimacy. And then you will enjoy the commentary on this. By the way, Baxter Kruger said to me, this is just the most beautiful verse. Anyway, I'm just quickly going to read verse 13. These are the ones, now in verse 13 of John 1, I told you, I didn't want to really go beyond, but here we are. These are the ones who discovered their genesis in God, beyond their natural conception. Thank God that each one of us here in this audience share 3 births, our natural conception, our co-begottenness in God, and the resurrection of Jesus. Look what he says here. This is not about our blood lineage, or whether we were a wanted or unwanted child. This is about our God begottenness. We are their dream come true and not the invention of our parents. You are indeed the greatest idea that God has ever had. And I'm concluding this verse 14. Suddenly, the invisible, eternal word takes on visible form, the incarnation on display in a flesh and blood person as in a mirror. In him, and now confirmed in us, the most accurate, tangible exhibit of God's eternal form. And I wanted to just read you a little verse. Maybe I just, could I do that?
In what?
Is there time?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Okay, I just want to, where are we now? I don't want to stop that. I just want to, hey? Okay, my angel. In fact, it is right on my Facebook page, but I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to go down on my Facebook page. You can just page down on Facebook. I think it was yesterday's post where I read a poem that is written by a beautiful gentleman. And this man has written a book with this poem in, and he's added another poem on Facebook. When I read these words, Paul Young pointed these words to me in the book, and I just sat there and wept. It is feeding God on Facebook, yesterday's Facebook. And I have someone's Facebook that can find yesterday's Facebook. I would so appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. There I go. Thank you, Lydia. I'm almost there. We're almost through. Okay. There we go. Okay. Hoe kan jy my naam kry vir jou? Hierso.
It's so wonderful to see all of you.
Here we go. I've got it right here. This is just such a most profound poem in the context of what we are sharing, our co-begottenness in God. The incarnation, the thoughts of God finding flesh as their habitation. And this is what Christmas is all about. This is what our entire celebration across this planet is about. It's about a gift, not a reward. And in this gift unwrapped, we find a mirror reflection. You know that the best gift you can give on this Christmas is a mirror. Bible maybe too, but just a mirror where people can just take a good look at themselves and become engaged with the thoughts of God. Listen to this most beautiful poem written by David Tenson, and it's called Feeding God. I'll read it to you. His face pressed against her breast. So this is what he looks like, the one the prophet spoke of. Her eyes catch Joseph's gaze. Mary whispers, he looks like us. Yahweh looks like us. His turned up nose now hunting for milk. With trembling fingers, she does her best to flick open the mouth of God, pulling his head in closer to her chest, closer to her heart. In this way, God receives his first meal in a stranger's home from the body of a Galilean, of a teenage Galilean,
Wow.
swallowing and slurping like a hungry lamb. The memory of every event leading us to this moment, leading up to this moment, courses through her body. Tears of relief cross her olive cheeks and fall upon her newborn. As Joseph now strokes her brow, she closes her eyes, looks up to the heavens, and catches herself giving thanks to God, who now lays in her arms. Emmanuel, God with us. And in this tender language, Holy Spirit awakens every single one of us to the tenderness, the beauty, the intimacy of Elohim redeemed in their own dwelling, in their own presence, wrapped up in your skin, in this moment, in you. The mystery that was hidden for ages and generations is now revealed. It is Christ in you. We bless you. Thank you, Jesus.